I received the prayer box, I neglected to inform you of some information that I got this morning. Lee Pruitt's father is in the process of making his transition. He graduates this life and continues his eternal journey, so I know that you'll be holding Lee and Cindy and Lee's family in your prayers as they go through this time. We have been on quite a ride here for quite a while as we've gone through Lent and talked about the Lenten process of examining what works for us and what doesn't, and how we begin this conscious spiritual journey. All of life is a spiritual journey. From the second that we show up, we're on it. The spiritual journey becoming a conscious path, a conscious walk, and Lent part of that process, and how that takes us into Holy Week, and how the Easter moment is our moment, how that awakening within us, that resurrection of our consciousness to a greater understanding, to the realization that there is more, that the universe is more than the sum of its parts, that there's more than what we can see and touch and taste, that there's a reality within ourselves, far more expanded, more brighter, unlimited, beyond our wildest imaginings. And then after the Easter experience, we've been looking at the stories in the Bible that talk about the community that was left after the resurrection. And we viewed that not through a historical or anthropological lens, but through noetic and metaphysical lens. How does it impact our lives? What's the mythical message in there about the spiritual journey for us? And I ask you to consider that that is about the Christ consciousness within us, gathering all of our faculties, all of our strengths, all of our experience, all of our past, our present, and our future together. That it's about a very internal process. Christianity is our cultural myth. We can't escape it. We're buried in it. We grow up with it. It's in all of our literature, TV commercials. You're bombarded with it constantly, and it's beautiful, and it's enriching. And it is the story of our internal evolution into the spiritual truth that we are. Religion, the very meaning of the word from the Latin religare, means to bind back together, to tie together, as in reattaching ligaments, to pull together what's scattered and fragmented and return it to its wholeness. It's interesting to me what culture does with these great religious truths, and how culture focuses on the 1 week that they call holy, and in the last 24 hours of Jesus' life, and in the last 3 days, and it's as if the spiritual journey stopped with the resurrection. You know, the stories that go on after the resurrection last for 50 days. Not a week, not a 24-hour period, not a 3-day period, 50 days. The metaphysical meaning of the number 50. 50 in the Hebrew culture was the time of Jubilee, the time of liberation. The 50-year cycle was the great cycle when the slaves were set free, when debts were released, when indentured servitude came to an end and you were emancipated. It's this great moment of freedom. And it's in these 50 days that we find the disciples in prayer and in meditation, having these experiences of dialogue with the infinite within themselves. Today, I want to turn to what was for the Apostle John the very last moment in this process. And let me share this with you. But Thomas, who was called the twin, one of the 12, was not with them when Jesus came. So the other disciples told him, "We have seen the Lord." But he said to them, "Unless I see the mark of the nails in his hands, and put my finger in the mark of the nails, and my hand in his side, I will not believe." A week later, his disciples were again in the house, and Thomas was with them. And although the doors were shut, Jesus came and stood among them and said, "Peace be with you." Then he said to Thomas, "Put your finger here and see my hands. Reach out your hand and put it in my side. Do not doubt, but believe." Thomas answered, "My Lord and my God." The last step in this process of our spiritual evolution, the step that frees us to our mission and purpose, this last step of religare, binding us back. This act of Thomas, called the doubter. Thomas, who when Jesus shows up isn't among the 12, he's not there, he's missing. And when Jesus comes back again in his presence, he has to touch. This is the most internal of all of the steps. We can do all the spiritual work we want. We can participate in all the spiritual practices. And nothing will quite work. And nothing quite leaves us satisfied. And nothing quite fits. And struggle continues in our life until we find Thomas. That fragmented part of ourselves that we've buried, that part of ourselves that's not present with the other disciples, that part of ourselves that we've judged as too good and too great for us, or too bad and wicked to be within us. The psychologists call it shadow work. It's frightful work. Scary stuff. And the unitive experience that we call enlightenment is not possible without it. You see, we live in a holographic universe. And that means that the whole is in each part. Kind of a shorthand for this is God is in all things are God. There's no place where God is not. And we live in this dichotomy of thought reinforced by our language where we see good and bad, right, wrong,